Hello everybody and welcome. For those of you who don't know me, I am Iva Perkovic from NEPC team, and I'd like to welcome you all to our final panel of our first day of the conference. As we mentioned earlier, this session will also be recorded, so if you don't want to be on the recording, I kindly ask you to turn off your camera. Also, if you have any questions or comments, you can write them in a chat and we will address it later. So I will be your moderator for today, and today we will discuss the inequality and inclusion based on the experience from the projects we here at NEPC are participating either as partners or leaders, but that all have in common addressing this issue of inequality and a strong focus on inclusion and participation. We have also different dimensions in this project, as you will see, but as I said, strong emphasis on the inclusion, participation, and inequality. So let me introduce to you our speakers and panelists for today. We have here Sanja Brajkovic from the Open Academy Step by Step from Croatia. Welcome, Sanja. Sanja will represent HEAD project, HEAD Empowering School Principals for Inclusive School Culture. That's the full name of the project. And HEAD project is actually led by NEPC. And it is focused on the inclusive education through the professional development of the school principals. It takes and exploits best practices from Slovenia and the Netherlands and pilots them in 60 schools in Croatia and North Macedonia. We also have here Vishnja Pavlovic from the Forum for Freedom in Education from Croatia. Welcome, Vishnja. Vishnja will represent the Start the Change project that is led by Forum for Freedom in Education, and it is focused on creating the generation of change makers through intercultural education and volunteering, with the ultimate goal of preventing and combating radicalization and extremism among young people. Finally, we also have today Petrit Tahiri from the Kosovo Education Center. Welcome, Petrit. Petrit will share with us his experience as a leader of the Arise Action for Reducing Inequalities in Education project. The project is focused on supporting schools, grassroots organizations, community and policymakers in developing actions and policies aim at mitigating the effects of low socioeconomic status on the students' achievement, but also in the final goal of reducing the inequalities in education. Thank you everyone for accepting the invitation and welcome once again. I hope we will have fruitful and inspiring discussion. I think we can begin with the first question that is perhaps a bit complex, but I think it is necessary for setting the stage and providing us with the better overview of the situation in our education systems. So I will start with you, Petrit. As in the Arise, one of the main initial outputs was the comparative report that underlined the inclusion and equity issues in the participating countries and demonstrated what countries can do to support not only low SES but all students. Could you possibly summarize for us what were the main challenges that were recognized regarding the inclusion and participation on this system level?
Okay, thank you, Eva, for a nice presentation of all of us. And dear all, it's nice to have this opportunity to discuss with you about our joint ongoing project. As you understood, the name of the project is ARISE, Action for Reducing Inequalities in Education. This project is implemented by a consortium of 8 organizations that are part of NEPC. And we are absolutely happy that on behalf of NEPS, we are tackling such an important issues such as this inequality in education. Maybe it will be good for all of you just to say some words about the project, because now we are somehow in the middle of the implementation of the project, and it's good to give some key information about the project. So, Action for Reducing Inequalities in Education is a project that is a kind of non-formal network of 8 organizations from NEPC, and the main objective is to strengthen the capacities of civil society organization for policy development and advocacy in the area of educational equity through regional cooperation and building national coalitions. The project have initiated by NEPC, and on the way we have jointly developed this idea, and now we as Kosovo Education Center are leading the consortium, but every activity is well divided or disseminated in all 6 countries of Western Balkan countries, plus Turkey, who is our partner as well. One of the key challenge in the beginning of this project is that we have kick off the project on 9th of March 2020, just a week before the lockdown. So imagine a regional project that main activities were focused on regional cooperation, regional meetings, regional trainings, and activities to be started in COVID time when we were locked in our homes and working in distance. But with our commitments and with a very good understanding from all our partners, we achieved to convert and adapt all activities on online mode. And since 9th of April, we have started implementation of activities. All activities are packed in 4 working packages, and the first working package is policy analysis and research. The second one is the policy outreach and advocacy. The third one is consortium learning, and the fourth one is school intervention. Why I'm sharing with you this information? Because we want to share with you also the levels of working and the levels of intervention. The first one, working package 1, was planned and already done in the first year of the project during 2020, planned to have 6 or to develop 6 national reports on equality and inequality in education, with a special focus on low SES children. Then all these 6 reports, just for your information, reports are from Kosovo, Serbia, Albania, Macedonia, Bosnia, and Turkey. These 6 reports then brought together in one comparative report. And today I will share some of the key findings of this comparative report. The second objective or second working package component is policy outreach. And we are happy that NEPC is leading this component because of their experience, and also because we are thinking that through this component we will achieve to address all issues identified through the working package 1, through national reports, through research. We can address structurally to the policy makers through establishing national coalitions and regional policy lab. The third component is development of the members of the consortium, so all 8 organizations from NEPC, plus we have 6 grassroots organizations that are part of the project now. From each country, one grassroots organization. So we have 2 levels of the consortium learning. One is learning between us as NEPC members, and the other is with 6 grassroots organizations that we are working jointly on addressing issues that were identified as part of working package 1. And the fourth component, now if you can just visualize this in your head from research findings, working on policy making and with policymakers, and the fourth component is going directly to schools and try to work concretely and implement concretely something in schools. Within this component, we have selected 25 schools among 5 countries in the region, and on each selected school from now on till end of 2023, we will support schools to first adopt their school action SDP school development plan, to align with specifics on addressing issues raised by the reports, and with a specific focus on addressing issues on inequalities in education. So this is how the project is planned, and now, as I said before, we are on the second year of the implementation, and we are considering the circumstances and the situation with COVID. I can say that we are very happy on the progress that we achieved until now. Now, this was as an introduction about the project. Just let me shortly to mention some of the key findings that we identified with the national reports and with the comparative report. So the first thing is that all countries, or as a conclusion of the reports, all countries have made progress towards the establishment of inclusive education. Also, they put it high on the policy agenda. But despite the strong commitment to the idea of inclusive education, financial funds are not sufficient. Education staff is not always fully trained, and communication between different stakeholders needs to be improved, and some forms of separate provisions are still present in countries. For example, based on disabilities or on language spoken, and so on. Another important recommendation or a finding from the report is that we have quite good legislation on national levels, but also within these different laws and policies, uh, there are differences in how they conceptualize the equality and equity. For instance, some conceptualize it as equal rights, whereas others as the absence of discrimination. Discrimination against specific groups is prohibited in all countries, and they all have a, a definition of inclusion that embraces multiple social groups, but some lists are more comprehensive than others. Then another conclusion from the reports are that this good legislative framework that exists in all countries uh, remain disconnected from the realities in everyday school practice. And I wanted to say earlier when Lana presented, we have, or our key recommendation will be, we have to develop policies, how to implement policies. So we have to it's kind of developing guidelines how to implement guidelines. So this is the situation that we are on. All countries has absolutely very good legislative framework, but it is a big discrepancy what is written in these laws, policies, and what is the reality in school. Also, Lana mentioned many times on her introduction the importance of inclusive curriculum, or the curriculum itself. And uh, we have to have inclusive curriculum is equally important as inclusive policies and infrastructure. So we have to have a more inclusive curriculum in our schools. Another key finding is that there is a mismatch or a lack of intersectional collaboration in all levels. This lack of collaboration is within uh, national institutions, for example, ministries, but also between the national and local governments. There are some other findings, but I think that these that I wanted to share with you until now are the key ones that we have to be focused in next work within the ARISE project. Last thing that I want to mention, because the time is going, is flying, is the importance of working directly in schools, working on changing the climate in our schools. So inequalities can be addressed not only through good government policies and through different affirmative measures on poverty and so on, but it is the most important thing from my point of view is how we can establish or create an a climate, an environment in our schools that uh, creates the equal possibilities for all childrens in a school. And for this, we have to have a trained teacher, well prepared teacher, and also move our head from this paradigm of treating equally all. We have to treat all based on their needs, not to treat them all equally. So yeah, this is it from my side now, and I hope that there will be some comments and questions, and I'm ready to answer or respond on this. Thank you, Eva, and thank you all for listening to me. Thank you for your introduction.
Thank you, Petrit, for this comprehensive overview. We have heard that actually we have big problem, as it looks like that we have a good legislation background, but in practice the things aren't functioning as they should. And regarding this gap that happens, let's now move just to this practice level. So I would ask you, Sanya, as part of the head project, the analysis actually was conducted on the school principal needs. So could you perhaps share with us what were the main challenges for the inclusive school culture from their perspective? So we have heard now a great overview of the situation on this systematic and legislative level. And can you tell us something about how it looks in the practice?
Yes. So within the project, two actually, let's say, studies were done. One is about the leaders' needs, and another one is about the inclusive climate in their schools. So it was about the rate of inclusive, let's say, climate in their schools. Maybe we should also mention why we are working with leaders, since we know that actually they are not tackling so much practice, or we know from many studies that actually they do not, how to say, direct influence on, for example, children challenges, children learning, and so on. But what actually they can do as a leaders and as principals, they can change the climate in the school. They can influence on the development of the inclusive climate in the schools, and inclusive climate in the schools actually can change the outcomes of the children, not just the cognitive outcomes, but also social emotional outcomes. And that was the reason why we choose together with NEPC, of course, is to actually to work on this topic and to help actually leaders, school leaders, to develop inclusive climate in their schools. Regarding their needs, we can say overall like conclusion was that they need how to say more focused professional development events and professional development how to say training seminars and so on, when they can build their skills and their competencies together with other other principles, since we know, for example, in Croatia, when they participate on those kind of trainings, they mostly get some knowledges about management of the schools, and management of the schools do not directly connected with the building inclusive climate of the school. What we also did at the beginning of the project, or the implementation part of the project, is that one study was conducted in all schools, which are, and with all principals, their pupils and teachers in that schools who are participating in the project, but also we have control group. And at the end of the project, we are repeating the same study, the same research, and we will see actually how we impact on, what is the impact on their schools. So what are the results of this first study, baseline, let's say baseline study? The questionnaire has four parts, and first part is democratic school leadership. We we tried to identify, is there some kind of democratic school leadership, how it is the perception of the school leaders and also teachers. Then the second one was the cooperation with the stakeholders. The third one was the presence of inclusive school policies and how they are implemented. And the fourth part was awareness of challenges uh, which they are facing in their schools. So regarding the first area, which was about democratic school leadership, what was the overall conclusion that everybody, like, and principals and teachers, are aware the importance of democratic kind of leadership in their schools. And they said, okay, we know that it is important, and also when you are comparing with the other areas, we can say overall that it is the area which is rated the most highly, let's say. But what is in when you're looking on the items, let's say, and this is my impression or my reflection, is what they appreciate are rules, boundaries, to have like clear examples what you should do and so on. And you will see when we connect this part with the fourth and third part of this questionnaire, which is talking about recognition of those who are part of the minorities and they are not recognized, and actually those who are, how to say, uh, put it on the aside in their schools, so pupils who are put it aside on their schools, then we can actually think about, is that democratic part of the leaders, democratic way of school leadership, or maybe it is something else. It seems that maybe we have just, boundaries and rules, but without vision how we will actually make our schools more inclusive. Regarding the area of cooperation with stakeholders, it was the same as Patrick just mentioned. Teachers even said that they are not motivated by their principals and school leaders to cooperate with the parents. We also have to have in mind that the study was done at the beginning of the COVID crisis, but also their perception was that they almost at all very, so the cooperation with other stakeholders are very low, especially for teachers. Principals also during the training recognize that they do not cooperate with institutions in the local community. So and also that there is no intersectorial cooperation, as Patrick mentioned, on the horizontal level or on the vertical level. Uh, uh, I just mentioned that regarding the inclusive school politics, they and it was also said during the training because they reflected it a lot, is that they actually recognized that they do not follow what children actually are children in risk, minority children, and what kind of additional help or some kind of other kind of instructions those children need. Also, what is the perception of teachers? So overall, they do not, so they need lots of more, let's say, help or professional development events, or for example, peer-to-peer cooperation regarding children who are minority children or children in risk. And at the end, which is connected with the fourth part of this that questionnaire, is that they do not actually, in most cases, they do not monitor any data, and they do not planning according to the data they actually collect on their schools. So we can conclude, yes, we have kind of democratic school leadership, but actually we are not focused on those who need those kind of democratic leadership, and it seems that it is just a way how we are functioning, but we are not focused on the why we are doing this. Yeah.
Thank you, Sanya. It is interesting how these problems are basically similar both on the system and then transferred on the school level. Let's focus now on the student's perspective. Which one of the early inputs or outputs in the Start the Change project was the comparative report on the students' voice and needs. Can you present to us shortly what were the main challenges that students from Croatia, Portugal, and North Macedonia recognized? Are there any similarities with what we've heard so far?
Thank you very much, and hello everyone. In terms of the comparative report, yeah, I would like to maybe firstly share that though our focus of the research was to find out students' perspective on inclusion and participation possibilities in the schools, that we as project coordinators and consortium members really faced with the challenge on how to implement the focus groups with students in order to ensure inclusion and participation of good representations of students in the time of the COVID and lockdown. So it really helped us actually, though it's with every crisis, I think it also provides the opportunity to learn something. So it really helped us actually to go as a consortium deeper in what it means, really inclusion and participation and the voice of students, and why is it important to think about the methods and approach, and what is the substantial or significant student voice, and also how to ensure good representations of all voices in let's say acoustic of one school or the school culture, or in order to ensure democratic culture, let's say, in the school, as it was already mentioned. And with that in mind, the researchers in 3 countries, with of course some postponement and going beyond the set deadlines, we managed to implement 30 focus groups in 15 schools. And the perspective of students, I might say it was not surprising for us. Probably it's not surprising for you that they mostly, in conclusion, students shared challenges and obstacles and actually experience of not being heard, that even if they are being heard, that they've been heard by the teachers who also didn't have or felt that they don't have a power to respond to their needs or to make some changes. It seems like, and this was the conclusion of authors, that within the school that there is already by default certain rules, and students recognize them, that are fixed and not open to their, let's say, needs and perspectives that they would like to change. Of course, there is another part of students, let's say, change in attitude, which they explain with the attitude of teachers as well, which is not, like we are not able to change anything. In secondary schools, usually the perspective is we are here for 4 years and we will go on, which corresponds also with some of the perspectives of teachers that we interviewed as also one of our activities, which is in secondary schools, yeah, we have every generation of students who are mentioning the same complaints, but we are limited by the rules that we have, and it's really, really hard to change. So let's say the key recommendation from the comparative report was again something that was, I think, also recognized by previous colleagues, which is how do we work on quality communication, and then even if we have a quality communication, how we can ensure the encouraging space where all stakeholders can have a voice, can have experience of being heard, and can have a space where some of the changes can really take place, because the alternative to that, it seems like from students and from teachers, is status quo and no change at all. So within our project, which is called accidentally, maybe not start the change, we are actually trying to explore together with teachers of 15 schools how we can really employ like whole school approach, and that there could be a space where voice of both students but also voice of teachers can be something regarded as significant and important. That I wouldn't take maybe a longer time, but that in the first year of the project, that we really then together with teachers, all of us partners worked really hard in building resources and training curriculum in which we revisited what it means to have a voice in school, and how that can be related to teaching and to teaching curriculum that is related to student backgrounds and their let's say communities that they come from. So it's related to their really life. And also maybe just to mention that we have in a third year that is in front of us a strong, hopefully also significant policy component then that we will hopefully have possibilities to contribute to this change on policy level.
Thank you, Vishnya. Thank you all. I think from what I heard, that we now have not so optimistic, but a nice overview of the situation, where we saw how problems from systemic level transfer and spill over to this practical school level, and which is also reflected, as we heard now from Vishnya, on the students as well, where they don't feel like they are heard. And as you said, Vishnya, you asked the question, how can we help? How can we empower them? So I would ask you, perhaps, Vishnya, you can continue, about how are you improving these things and empowering students and teachers and school staff throughout your projects, throughout all these dimensions. Perhaps you can mention some of the concrete examples from the project.
Yes. So in the first year, what we I think all partners focused the most, beside the challenges of organizing the teacher training, was creating curriculum, and then together with teachers, actually exploring what the student voice really means and how to include and how to empower students for active participation. And I think that in the experience of all partners, what was important was actually tackling our own perspective as adults. Like, what does it mean to have a voice for us? Did we always have a voice? When we didn't have a voice, how did it felt? Just trying to find out the meaning of voice for us as an adults, and let's say how and what context, what kind of support helped us to really find our own voice. And I think it really clicked with teachers, and just exploring also for themselves personally. And then again, going back to students, like, what is the space in school that we can provide that students can really have a voice? And what does it mean? Do we just only like listen to students, invite them to say, and what could be the next steps? And this also kind of helped teachers to identify all space in the school where they can students can be supported to give their perspective, and then again to ensure the audience or the space or the concrete change that they could take on themselves and really get some actual change, and for students, of course, to ensure this experience of them. Yes, we can be heard, we can do some change, and what we say matters, even if some problems that they're pointing out cannot be solved, but just by being heard, being given explanation, and really showing understanding and empathy for their problems, that it really helps in changing this culture. So some of the concrete examples, so I will mention those from Croatia, though if we had more time, definitely there are interesting examples and volunteering activities and initiatives and projects in North Macedonia and Portugal. One is from primary school, where we had a teacher who, together with a group of students, actually, she decided to continue to work with students from the focus group in previously mentioned activities. So just to have this experience, okay, you shared with researchers your perspective and identified problems, and then the teacher from the same school continued to work with those group of students and trying to tackling different issues that mentioned. And what was interesting with that school, with that teacher and with that group, that they actually decided to include those students who are of different grades and ages, is actually to give opportunity for those students to change policy documents of the school. So this was really interesting experience, I think, for the school, for those students definitely, and also for us, just giving one good practice example. So one of the first documents, and they will continue, that they addressed was student award of the final year, like who is the best student in the end of the primary school, who was usually provoked among students feeling of, let's say, injustice. They sometimes were not so happy with it, because usually it was the recommendation of one or two teachers for the usually academically best students. So the students in this group, they designed the criteria, indicators, and they expanded the criteria from academic to also a student who is active, who is supportive, who is, let's say, active in different extracurriculum activities. This really presented, the group presented this their document to all teachers, and then to their own classrooms, and adjusted. So they try to include the voices of all school, and now they are happy with this document, and now they will start with other school documents. So they titled themselves reformators. I think it's really indicative, I think, particularly for Croatia, to have this group of students. Another project, if I'm not taking too much time, I will just go quickly, because I think it's important to mention the secondary school, vocational schools, where students were looking for more, let's say, empathy from teachers, to have a feeling that teachers understand their issues. They symbolically call their project Walk in My Shoes. And so we worked with those school team, and they were really, let's say, open, and this project gave them the space to organize what they also recognized as necessary. So they organized platform. It was meant to be alive, but it was online, where this group of students from focus groups actually identified and shared the different issues and problems in front of the school principals and some other key teachers, and sometimes that they shared in their reports, some problems have been solved, and some problems have been discussed, and that already mattered to them, and they could, like students, of course, have capacity to understand also these limitations of the system. So these are just a few examples on Yeah, with some effort, how the school culture, because for those two schools, this really meant a change in a school culture, not only for students, but for those teachers.
Thank you, Vishnya. Those are really great and inspiring, and I think really relevant examples. And I think they can't be implemented without the support of the school principals. So I would ask Sanya if she could perhaps share with us experiences from the head project, and how can we, how are you working with the school leaders to make this shift from managers bound in boundaries and the rules to pedagogical leaders who are supporting and empowering students.
So maybe the main, I'm not sure if it is the main part of the implementation of the project is actually developing and implementing the curriculum for professional development of school leaders in order to help them to develop inclusive school climate and culture in their schools. So what we did together with other partners is that actually we developed first the framework of this curriculum, and then we discussed and have a conversation with some policymakers. We have a policy coalition, and if I should describe what is the process, then the process is, I think, bottom up and also horizontal, because we have a lot of conversations with those policymakers in order to see how they perceive the same curriculum. Before one month, we finished the implementation of that curriculum, which was consisted of 5 modules and 10 days of training, which is, I think, a lot. But what actually give us this extensive kind of training, that actually we how to say, we build the community of school leaders within the project, and right now they have very strong Viber group, and I'm part of that Viber group, and they are continue to discuss a lot of topics, and even we developed one club of book readers now, and at Friday we have the first meeting of club of book readers, which is consisted of principals of the schools. But what was the topics of the training? So it was like more about leadership, and a different kind of leadership which are supporting the inclusive climate and culture. Then we have a module about inclusive climate and also culture. We have a module about social inclusion and social justice, which was very important for them. Also about the monitoring and planning some changes in their schools. And they have a lot of sharing. And each module was consisted with one part which was more, how to say, cognitive, and naming lots of things and lots of concepts, because we think that you should understand the concept and the research, and then you can, of course, implement that. But there was lots of also sharings, and not just sharings, but group reflection, because our goal was to build actually the learning community, which is consisted of the principles. The feedback is actually great, and now we know, and I know that it is the same with another partners in this project, especially with Forum, and they say that they have the same feedback. And now the other principals in Croatia ask us to organize the training so fast for them, because they would like to be included as well. Yeah. So that's the implementation part. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It is so nice to hear that you have managed to find dedicated participants and create such a strong community. Which leads me to my next question for Petrit. As in the RISE, you have this whole school approach. You have involved, as you mentioned, grassroots organizations as well, and community. You're working with teachers, school staff. Can you share with us how are you implementing these activities that are addressing inequalities in education and are focused on inclusive school culture?
Since we are in the beginning of working with schools, I cannot give you specific examples how this will be done, but we are in the process of implementing of grassroots organization projects. And regarding the reports that we have received from our partners, each of grassroots organization are the main focus are having in organizing this information sessions, awareness raising campaigns on specific issues that are integration of low SES students in school life, than inequality in education, and so on. For example, in Kosovo, last week, our grassroots organization organized a training for teachers with a focus on the discrimination, stereotypes, prejudice, and so on. So this is a way how we can address this issue, and this for sure in long term will have impact on this establishing or creation of this environment that Sanya and Vishnya mentioned in schools. But I think that the main challenge for all of us who are working on this is how we can overcome this discrepancy or this gap between the formal doing things formally and doing things concretely in schools. For example, Vishnya mentioned this establishing of students' councils and other bodies or mechanisms within schools that are students are important part of that body. But sometimes this are only on papers. If you go and visit schools, they have all list of names who are part of this students council or parent council. But if you ask them, okay, let me see some of the minutes of the meetings that they had, immediately you will face a challenge to find this, because it's not that they didn't had meeting or had minutes of meeting, but they didn't have meeting at all. So these are some challenges that we have to overcome somehow. And I think a RISE approach is that we are trying to build something from the roots. So by having all these things written in SDP, in school development plan, and then help schools to develop action plans, and in the same time support schools to implement that action plans. This means that we will, at least for the life of the project, we will have something concretely, a concrete results. And our main challenge will be how we can have this impact or this intervention sustain after the project ends. And we think that by having them part of the school framework documents like SDP or annual action plan, it is one way. But we have also to make them commit and also to motivate them. But motivation in this, from my point of view, is the results that we will show to them or they will feel at the end of our testing period. I hope that these plans that we have quite well in our minds will be implemented in this way and will have these results, and this will help us then to further develop and share and disseminate with other schools, because as I told you, we have only 25 schools in the region, but hopefully the results will be shared in other schools as well.
Thank you, Patrick. I know we are short on time, but I would just like to come back to the initial question and this actually question of the policies. As we heard, we have some legislation, some policies, both on system level, both on school level, but it looks like something is missing. And all of these projects have strong policy component. So I would like to a bit get your perspective and opinion. How are you involving the policymakers? Can we make any change that is, as Patrick said, concrete without them? And how can we actually make them commit to what they promise? So I don't know if someone would like to volunteer to go first.
I
Okay,
I will begin shortly. Yes, as I said before, maybe one of the our ways is let's develop some guidance or policies, how to implement policies. But with these documents, uh, as you from NEPS, you know, we are now in the process of developing these roadmaps towards the policy interventions and what kind of interventions we will do. So in this regard, I think that we have to maybe bring all policies together in one roadmap, and then jointly as coalitions that we have part of a RISE project to push, to advocate and to make pressure towards policy making to implement those policies that exist. And it's not necessary to do it only in national level. This also has to be start from the schools, because also schools are lacking the implementation of current legislative framework, because they are not willing to do this, and no one is asking for the accountability. So this is one aspect that we have to pay attention. Transparency, accountability. Until we will have these two components, I hope that these policies that are very well written and structured will be implemented.
Thank you, thank you. I would agree with you, Sanya. Do you maybe want to share something?
Yes, Petri, thank you for this, and I would maybe add one step more, since I'm coming from step by step. So, and one step is one between. It seems that at least I think in our situation that we have policies, you know, we have lots of laws, and they are not so bad in many times. And as you said, that there is no implementation. But I think in the middle of these two parts is actually understanding. So we write it down, we would like to implement, but very often we do not know if we understand the same, if we understand what is the purpose of those those documents. So what we actually need to do is to open the floor to discuss about what's going on here, what is written here, and what is the purpose of those documents. Because very often those who are working, this is not their guilt, but they are not empowered, to discuss. This is also because we do not have democratic schools, and we should empower people to discuss and to say how they understanding. Very often they see obstacles, but they do not see opportunities. And maybe we can also work on with them on just how you read those documents, what is written down, and how you would see the implementation. What is your vision of implementation of these documents? Because if we just, and you mentioned at the beginning, if we just say inclusion, we know that different people actually sees different. When they open the door of the room, of the classroom, they expect to see different things, and we do not actually build the same vision of the inclusion. Yeah. Maybe just to mention, Eva, what we are doing in HEAD, and this is actually the component which is added right now. We realized that it would be nice to empower principals to do advocacy for those, how to say, changes they think it should be made in order to build inclusive school cultures. And what we are going to prepare for them is one advocacy training. And during that advocacy training, we would like actually to make them more competent and to build their competencies so they will advocate for some changes on the local level and also on the national level. So actually what we did is that we start from the researches and from the concepts. We build the understanding of those concepts. Then they shared each other what they are doing in the schools. They have a community of learning, and now they are prepared actually to advocate for some of changes.
Thank you, Sanya. This is a really great initiative. I would just like to hear also from Vishnya and her experiences before we wrap up and go to questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you for these good recommendations. They are noted from both of previous contributions in my notebook, definitely. In terms of the discrepancy that we have in terms of the existing policy framework for student voice and actual practice in the schools, definitely I think one of the things that we did and that we plan to continue doing is actually that as organization in our strategic planning, we put student voice as horizontal topic. So in all our programs, in all our teacher trainings and seminars, we will ensure that this topic is, let's say, integrated into the curriculum of the seminar. And just as we all recognize that the framework exists and the discrepancy or the gap actually comes from different limitations, and particularly the attitude of teachers, or let's say adults in the school life. So we can only on a school level continue to work on this topic in our direct work of schools, and hoping that the change will come. In terms of the national policy level, as it was already previously mentioned, in our also final year, we will also, with the help of the NEPC, create national roadmaps. And yeah, this will be a challenge, definitely. In forum, we are constantly discussing how to. We don't have so much of positive experience in how to include and to get them on board. Let's say those who can really make let's say difference to the practice, even from existing, and not to mention integrating some new policy developments. And one of the things that I think in Forum we will try to do on the national level, let's say, to include other stakeholders beside us, so that we have a stronger voice, let's say, in front of the official policy decision makers, which means we will include UNICEF, we will include Ombudsman for Children, youth, National Youth Creation Network. So just other institutions and NGOs who maybe together we will have, let's say, because we have the same actually agenda in terms of if you look on the student voice from children rights, and in that sense we hope, yeah, with the help that of these national roadmaps and exact steps and interventions that we will yeah, make it.
Thank you, Vishnya. Thank you all for sharing your experiences, thoughts, and really some great inspiring actions and initiatives. For me, it's always nice to hear when the project grows out of its limits and somehow finds its way to build actually a community like some of you mentioned. And I would like to open the floor now for our audience for questions and comments. I saw in the chat that Ulvia would like to share something. So go ahead, Ulvia.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I downloaded both the reports and I will review them. Thank you very much. And I think I will be using this in the reading materials for my inclusive education course. I think it's very important to have this kind of perspective. But reflecting to what you said, I have no doubt that it's very important work. And but I just have some comment, maybe strange comment. You know, the overall approach always to inclusive education culture development, it usually was coming from bottom to up. And it was following this dichotomy of democracy, those who are ruling and those who are ruled by. And so those who are ruling, they should meet the needs of those who are ruled by. But I don't know about your country context. But when I see in my country context and country context in the region, you know, I think that policymakers are also vulnerable. They are vulnerable because they are not provided with this many opportunities to learn, to develop, to know, to participate in these change initiatives. We usually, I remember from my experience, we usually were inviting them to listen. And I'm just thinking that maybe for so long time, because for instance, inclusive education reform in Azerbaijan, 20 years, and it's the same. I think that maybe sometimes it's reasonable to change the approach and to target those poor policymakers who have to meet the needs, but they don't know how and why. That was just strange comment. Thank you so much. But thank you for the materials you developed. Yes, please.
Thank you, Ulvia. It's a really interesting comment and food for thought. Lana would like to share something.
I can't resist this invitation about poor policymakers. Sorry, Julia. Because we have all these poor people in our systems. We have the poor teachers, the poor school leaders, the poor policymakers, and in the end, the poorest of them all are the students. So I would always focus our thoughts towards them. But I do agree with Ulvia that policymakers are not empowered. And we constantly come across this where they feel they then don't have power. They are bureaucrats or not bureaucrats. And this is a problem. So I am all for dialogue. And we need to really find ways in which we can bring what we're trying to do much closer to what they can do. And one of them is, as Sanya said, I think this understanding. I think they also don't really understand how or what they're supposed to do. So yeah, poor students number one, but yes, let's empower everybody.
Thank you, Lana. Do we have any more comments or questions for our speakers? Okay. If not, I would like to thank you all. Thank you to our panelists for accepting the invitation and sharing all this significant and inspiring work with us. I'm sure we all have a lot to reflect after this, well, not so short discussion. But I would also like to thank you all who participated today, and I hope we will see you as well next week on our second day of the conference, where we will be presenting and discussing about the education policy networks in the first session, and in the second session we will address the role of education in the more than urgent needed green transition. So thank you all once again, and hopefully we will see you next week. Bye.